it's Sara. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am very excited because I am going to be talking about my favorite books of 2022. So 2022 has been a weird reading year for me. If you've been following me here for a while, you might already know that I have not found a lot of new favorites this year. I've talked about this multiple times in the last couple of videos that I've posted on my channel, but basically this has been a very middle of the road year for me in terms of reading. I've read a lot of books that were just okay, that did not really blow me away, but today we are going to be talking about the most important ones, the ones that truly had an emotional impact on me, that made me so happy or that made me cry or scream, and I'm very excited about that. So like I said, because this was a weird reading year, I only have 6 books that really made it to my top books of 2023. Usually I have 10 books that I really enjoyed, but this year only 6 of them became new all-time favorites. Hi, this is Editing Sarah, and I realize as I'm editing this video that I see 2023 instead of 2022, not once, not twice, but 3 times in the span of this video. So please excuse me, it's been a long year. So yeah, enjoy. So without any further ado, let's just dive into my top 6 books of 2023. Coming in at number 6 is a book that I actually finished yesterday as I'm filming this video, and that book is none other than A World of Curiosity by Louise Penny. This is her 18th novel. And I usually talk about these books being like, oh, you know, this is a series about murder, but it brings me a lot of comfort because I love the characters. I've been reading this series for honestly over 10 years at this point, I think. So really these characters mean a lot to me, and they are so near and dear to my heart. And so even though some of the themes talked about in this series are very dark, I still just really find a lot of comfort in these novels. But this one was stressful as hell. And I read this book, and I kid you not, I could not read this before going to bed because it would give me nightmares. And I was not expecting that, but it was also so good. I couldn't put it down. Every single time I pick up one of Louise Penny's books, I just get so sucked into the story. And I've just realized as I'm talking that I haven't told you what this is about. But basically this is a series, and we follow our main character Ahmad Gamache, who is a chief inspector, and we follow him as he solves murders. And a lot of the murders actually always happen in this little village hidden in the woods called Tree Pines. And so because of that, we often see the same cast of characters returning, and they're just so great. What I love the most about Louise Penny is that she is so great at writing banter between all of those characters, but she is also so good at, like I said, really sucking you in with all of the action sequences and all of the mystery involved. But she is also so good at writing about art and humans' emotions. All of the characters, they feel so real, they feel really fleshed out. She just has this very good grasp on human nature, and the way that she writes about it is very fascinating, and it's often very beautiful and philosophical, and there are recurring themes in the series that I also really love. But she took me on a wild loop with this one, and I was not expecting that. There were a lot of dark things happening in this, a lot of very disturbing stuff, and it was stressful. It was very stressful, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, this is number 6, and I feel like I've rambled about this book for 5 minutes, but anyway, we're just going to keep on going. The next book on this list is once again a new installment from a beloved series of mine, and that book is of course Seasparrow by Kristin Cashore. This is the 5th book into the Gracing series, which is a YA fantasy series that I've talked about so many times on my channel, but just in case you're not familiar with it, this is a series that takes place into this world in which there are people who are born with eyes of 2 different colors, and these people are Gracelings, which means that they have this very special talent for one specific thing. And in our first book, we follow our main character Katsa, who is graced with fighting, which means that she's really good at fighting, and we basically follow her as she goes on this quest to try and find a missing person. And each book of the series focuses on a different main female character from that world, and it's just such an incredible YA fantasy series, and this last book was no exception to the rule. I just love everything that Kristin Cashore writes. This one is more of a survival tale tale rather than a fantasy tale, as we follow our main characters as they go through a shipwreck on their way home from a different country, and the shipwreck happens into the fantasy world equivalent of Antarctica. So you have like polar bears and caves and ice, and it was very stressful to read. Once again, apparently I love to make myself stressed. Just like the Louise Penny books, I've lived with these characters for such a majority of my life, and I just love them so dearly. And so to be reunited with them, even though it was like very stressful situations, was just absolutely amazing. I just love that this book series explores feminism in so many different facets. I love that it talks about the importance of remembering and of like community, and it is just so wonderful. If you love fantasy, if you love feminist fantasy and the found family trope, then you have to give this book series a try. Coming up next, we have yet another book that I've talked so much about on my channel this year, and that book is none other than Still Life by Sarah Winman. I read this one with the Thieves Book Club earlier this year. I think it was like in April and May, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the reasons why I love this book so much is because it took me by surprise in the best way. I started reading this book thinking that I was probably going to like enjoy it okay, not really like fall in love with it, but boy oh boy did I fall in love with this book. This is basically a historical fiction novel that follows mainly two main characters. You have Ulysses, who is a young soldier during World War II, and you also have Evelyn, who is an art historian in her 60s. And one day in Tuscany during the Second World War, they meet, and because of circumstances, they spend the night in this cellar, and then in the morning they go their separate ways. And then we follow them throughout their lives, and we see how they still think about this encounter that they had with one another, and we also see how they create these communities around them that at some point finally converge as they meet again. And this book was just so extraordinary. The way that Sarah Winman talks about art, because obviously Evelyn is an art historian, lots of the things that are discussed in this are about the protection of art from the Nazis at the beginning, but also just about art history in general and the effect that it has on humanity. It was just so incredible and so beautiful. I also love the characters. Obviously they are just so great. Another big theme of this video for me is definitely like character work and found family, because these characters in this book and their relationships made me feel so many things. One of the main characters in this book is literally a parrot, and let me tell you, you fall in love with this parrot and you want him to have the best parrot life ever. You just follow all of these characters during these small and big meaningful moments in their lives, and it's just so beautiful to witness the love that they have for one another, the care that they have for one another, and how these relationships really make them become better versions of themselves. And it is just, yeah, it was just so beautiful. So many moments moved me to tears. So many passages I just wanted to underline forever because they were just so beautiful. I honestly cannot wait to reread this book and just sub my eyes out. It was such a great reading experience. It is definitely very slow paced, so if you love like fast-paced stories, I wouldn't say this is the right book for you. But if you love to see characters and the relationships between them evolve while also having this like beautiful atmosphere and just great writing, then I would definitely recommend this book. It was so beautiful. But we're now entering the top 3, and the next book and series that I want to talk about is actually for the action-packed girlies out there, and that book is Furysong by Rosaria Munda. This is the 3rd book into the Aurelian Cycle series by this author. This is a YA fantasy that basically centers our two main characters, Annie and Lee, and they live into this world in which dragon lords used to rule, but there has been a revolution, and so now the dragons are actually used to protect the people. And Annie and Lee at the beginning of the 1st book are entering this competition to become the leader of their dragon riders fleet, and we see how they struggle with the new political system and how it is after all not as great as they thought it was, and how they have to grapple with their power and also with their relationship with one another. And this book series was a wild ride from beginning to end, and this book was so stressful to read, but oh my gosh, I enjoyed every single second of it. So many things happened, there are so many plot twists, so much political stabbing, and also real stabbing, and also just great relationships between all of these characters, and they are so messy. It had been so long since I had read a YA fantasy story in which the characters are just so messy and so stupid, and you want to scream at them sometimes, but you also love them with all of your heart and you want nothing but the best for them, but still you see them get into these situations that you know are not going to end well, and it is just so painful but also so good. I just absolutely adored this trilogy. I feel like this is one of those that I'm going to reread so many times because I just love every single second of it. It was just so much fun, and I love, once again, the components of found family just hit different. They're just so special to me. But anyway, this was just such a great reading experience. If you really want to read like a YA fantasy trilogy that is just so much fun, that will make you scream and cry and laugh, then you need to pick this one up. It is so good, it is so well done, the world building is great, the plots, like I said, are explosive, and just everything about it was honestly so great. So yeah, this definitely deserves the top 3 spot on my list. I just absolutely adore this series. Then coming in at number 2, we have a book that I honestly think brought me back to life. And this might be dramatic, but first of all, I am dramatic, and also I don't think it's that much of an exaggeration because I felt so wild while I was reading this book. Honestly, I felt so alive, and that book is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I could not do a favorite books of the year video without talking about this one because oh my gosh, this is just such a good romance novel. It has everything you need in it. It has angst, it has great plot, great characters, a love interest that will once again make you develop feelings for fictional men and also raise your standards like to skyrocket levels. And it has the great trademark Emily Henry humor that I just love, but also, like I said, the angst and the emotional things that the characters are going through is just so amazing. I've never cried while reading a romance novel. Maybe I got like a little bit teary-eyed at some points, but I've never fully sobbed for like 30 minutes while listening to a romance novel audiobook the way that I did at the ending of this one. Oh my gosh, I was losing my marbles. I was just having an emotional crisis. I adore the characters. I think they're great. I love the banter between them. I love their chemistry. There were so many moments that just made me scream because the pining was excellent. It was excellent. The yearning was so good. I just realized that I did not even tell you what this book is about, but I've been gushing about it for 2 minutes. So at this point, maybe you're not interested, but it's basically about these 2 people who work in publishing. They have this kind of like rivalry, and somehow they run into each other in this very small town, and they have this very complicated romance, and it's just, it was so good. It was so good. Like, I don't even know what to say at this point. Just read it. It's so good. And it made me believe in love again. There, I said it. Okay, moving on. Finally, coming in at number 1 is a book that will probably surprise absolutely no one. Probably like most of these did not surprise you because these are the books that I've been screaming about for the entire year on this channel because I did not find a lot of new favorites, but when I did, boy, I did not shut up about them, and this next book is no exception to that rule. And that book is, of course, The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. I read this book, I think, back in April, and I have just not stopped gushing about it ever since and thinking about it and just loving it more and more as every day passes. Honestly, this is like a big love story between me and this book this year, and let's talk about it again. In case you don't know about this book, this is a collection of short essays that John Green wrote about the most random things, and basically he talks about that thing in question and then at the end gives it a rating out of 5. And let me just give you like a quick few examples of what the essays in this book are about. One of them is about Halley's Comet, one of them is about the Lascaux cave paintings, but one of them is also about scratch and sniff stickers. One is also about Canada geese, which is one of my favorites. I do really enjoy that one. There's also one about sunsets that made me sob while I was doing the dishes. Basically, this book just ranges from the most unusual random thing that you can think about to some of humanity's best work, and John Green just talks about these things and really talks about them in details and how much they mean to him on a personal scale, but also what they mean for humanity. And if you're not the kind of person who loves to think very deeply about some random things, this book will not be for you. But if you are the kind of person who often like questions like the universe and why human beings are the way that we are, then you will absolutely adore this book. And I highly recommend actually listening to the audiobook because John Green narrates it and he does such a great job, and the emotional impact of him narrating some of these essays is really what made this book for me. You can really tell how passionate he is about some of these things and also how much some of these things mean to him, and that is definitely one of the things that moved me the most about this book. But it's also the way that he understands so many things about humanity, and the way that he talks about it in such a loving way but also in a critical way is just so interesting. I think this is the kind of book that I just read at the perfect time, and it made me so happy, it made me laugh, and it also made me so hopeful in a way that I really needed. And I'm sure that I will go back to this one like times and times again. I've already read it twice this year. I underlined so many of my favorite quotes and I just absolutely love it, and it really left a big impact on me, and for that reason I give this book 5 stars to paraphrase John Green, and it is definitely my favorite book of the year. Alright, so these were all of my favorite books from 2023. I feel like I was not very coherent talking about them, as I often feel every year. You know, that classic Jane Austen quote, if I love you less, I might be able to talk about it more. This applies to all of the books that just really make their place into my heart. But this was fun. I love to just ramble about these books for quite a long period of time. I think this video is going to be quite long, but if you've watched till the end of this video, thank you so much for doing so. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know down below which are your favorite books that you've read this year, because I would really love to know. If you've watched until the end of this video, please leave me a heart emoji in the comments so that I know that you're there. I hope that you really enjoyed this. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!